In the last two videos, I have briefly discussed the history of Hadith transmission in the first 200 years from the time of the Prophet ﷺ to the time of Imam Bukhari and Muslim. However, this discussion will be incomplete if I don't touch upon the topic of Hadith methodology. Now, I will discuss the Hadith methodology in a very brief and summarized way, which is not exhaustive and detailed. The main points in Hadith methodology are Isnad or chain of narration, Isnad criticism, and corroboration of the Isnad. First is Isnad or chain of narration. Imam Bukhari heard something from Ismail, who heard it from Malik ibn Anas, who heard it from Abu Zinad, who heard it from Al-A'raz, who heard it from Abu Huraira, who heard it from the Prophet. And this is the Isnad or the chain of narration for this hadith. So once we know the chain of a hadith, the scholars would do what is called Isnad criticism, whereupon they will scrutinize each and every narrators in the chain and try to figure out whether this individual narrator is trustworthy or not, is truthful or not, is sound or not. And on this basis, they will determine the soundness of the entire chain of a hadith or the Isnad of a hadith. And this is called the Isnad criticism. So, after the Isnad criticism, the corroboration of the Isnads is one of the most important thing in Hadith methodology. For example, this is the chain of a single hadith. This was reported by Bukhari, Muslim, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Ibn Hibban, again Bukhari in another chain of narration, again Ahmad in another chain of narration, Muslim in two other chain of narrations, and Ibn Majah, all narrating this from Abu Huraira through various different chain of narrations. So we can say that this is corroborated by multiple different persons in the last level. So we can be sure of that none of them individually have concocted this or fabricated this. The same is true in the second last step in the chain. All these people are narrating this from different other people, so we can be sure of that they have not fabricated this or concocted this as well. The same is true for the next level of narrators as well, and this goes in similar manner all the way up the chain. Now this hadith is only narrated by Abu Huraira radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, but there are many other hadith which are narrated by two or more than two companions of the Prophet So they will be corroborated in the level of companions as well. However, the Sunni Hadith methodologies takes the companion as by default trustworthy and sound when they are narrating directly from the Prophet, because in the Quran God has said that these are the people with whom God is pleased and they are guided, as well as the Prophet ﷺ has said in a hadith that the best of the generations is his generation, and the second best is the next generation. And also on the basis of common sense that the religion is transmitted by the companions to the later generations. If we have to doubt the companions as per the Sunni methodology, then we have to doubt a lot of the religion. This is another hadith from the Prophet, narrated by companion Anas bin Malik, and these are all the different chains through which this hadith was narrated in each generation. And in the last generation, this was reported in the books of Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, Sunan ibn Majah, Sunan Tirmidhi, and Musnad Ahmad. So this report is also corroborated, and the scholars in these chains have presumably done the isnad criticism of the previous narrators, and this has been done on multiple steps but by multiple people, all independently of each other. So there is a sort of peer review going on in different levels, and this is corroborated by multiple chain. And the very basic isnad, which is the first level, is also present for each line of narrations. So this is the hadith here. You can just read it by pausing it. This brief overview of hadith and its history will not be complete without the corresponding political history of the Muslim world. Now, this is a very brief, summarized history of the parallel political development in the Muslim world, along with the development of the Hadith sciences. We have the Rashidun Caliphate of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and Hassan in green here from 10th Hijri till the 40th Hijri. Also, we have the corresponding common era year of their beginning of the reign and the end of the reign, as well as very important political development during this time, and the companions and scholars who have lived and died in a particular era during the time of a particular king. After the Rashidun Khilafat, we have the Umayyad dynasty empire mentioned here in this blue, and then the Abbasid in this dark brown till the time of Imam Bukhari and Muslim. There are important events such as first fitna, second fitna, third fitna, Abbasi revolution, and the Mihna, all plotted along the time. Now, political developments had some positive as well as some negative impacts on the development of Hadith. For example, the first book of Hadith were written by Ibn Shihab Zuhri at the request of the Umayyad ruler of the time, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and also later Hisham demanded that books of Hadith be written for the princes of the dynasty. Then we know for a fact that Abbasid ruler Al-Mansur asked Imam Malik to write his Muwatta, and Harun al-Rashid asked Imam Malik if he could use Muwatta as the constitution of his empire. We have a lot of Hadith identified as fabricated during the time of the First Civil War and the Second Civil War. Now, some people will argue that all of the fabricated Hadith during these civil wars have already been identified by the scholars, whereas some others will argue that not all of them have been identified and some still may remain in the books. Many of the companions themselves were involved in different sides of the political battles in these first and second fitna, who are either narrators or the later scholars who are the narrators of some of the hadith, such as Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Muawiyah Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Hassan Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Marwan, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Abu Huraira Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Aisha Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anha. Later scholars such as Zuhri, who have been involved with the political powers at the capacity of a civil servant, or Ibn Hanbal, who have been prosecuted by the state for his scholarly opinion. Another dimension of the political influence is the chain of narrations from the son of Hussein Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, Ali ibn Hussein Zain al-Abidin, and his son Muhammad al-Baqir and his son Jafar as-Sadiq is not that prominent in the sixth book, even though Jafar as-Sadiq and his student Malik ibn Anas and presumably Abu Hanifa and also Malik's student Shafi'i and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who was Shafi'i's student, their narrations are quite prominent in the sixth book, much more prominent than the chain of narrations that goes through Jafar as-Sadiq to Muhammad al-Baqir to Zain al-Abidin. Up to this point, I have only given the standard version of the hadith narration and methodology and its history. In the next video that I will link down below, I will ask some specific questions that I hope you will think about, as well as I hope some scholars will provide some answer. Thank you for watching.